the Xamarin Development Cycle with James Montemagno.
The Azure DevOps Podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Each show brings you hard-hitting interviews with industry experts, innovating better methods, and sharing success stories. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jeffrey Palermo, your host. Make sure to check out www.azuredevops.show for past episodes and show notes. And a few announcements will be later in the show, but Microsoft Ignite just happened at the time of this recording. And so there's a lot of things coming out. I encourage you to get the recordings of all of the sessions and the keynotes if you were not able to be there or tune in live. And let's get on to the show. Today, we are talking to James Montemagno. He is a program manager at Microsoft in the client developers tools. You might have seen him on Xamarin content. He produces all kinds of videos, has his own online show and podcast, and he works specifically with mobile development with Xamarin. You can find him on Twitter at James Montemagno, at JamesMontemagno. James, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm absolutely fantastic. It's a beautiful, cloudy day here in Seattle, Washington. So, I'm super happy. It's good. I have my Elgato key lights, which are these really bright lights just blaring in my face, which is good because I have this home sort of podcast, Twitch stream dome of awesome that's here. I have like 15 cameras pointed at me at all times, and it's wow. One of those things where you see these Twitch streamers and production, you're like, well, you get to see them, but you don't get to see the behind the scenes. Right. And honestly, these lights, when you live in Seattle, are so important because I woke up this morning, it's pretty dark outside. It's been raining a lot. I come into the podcast room. I go to my stream deck. I hit a button. It's like, boom, sunlight in my face. And it makes me happy. And I'm happy to be here. I love recording podcasts. I love talking about the stuff that I love. So I'm really excited to be here, Jeffrey. So thank you for having me on.
Awesome. That's a good point about the sunlight. And I live in sunny Austin, Texas, where it's October 18th. And I think fall just started 2 days ago because it was short sleeves weather up until then. So it's a totally different climate. Sometimes we yearn for the rain.
Yeah, I grew up in Ohio. I went to school and worked down in Arizona and Phoenix area for about 6 years. And now I've been in Seattle for coming up on 8-year anniversary in November 2019. So I moved here in 2011 for a job as a mobile developer. So it's been 8 years since I've been doing mobile development with Xamarin, which is crazy to think about. The years go. And a lot of people ask me like, well, what is that transition like? You go from like one of the, most sunny places like, Phoenix or Texas, like all the time to Seattle. And I'm like, well, it really makes you appreciate those days where the sun is out in your face and you're walking around and it's great. And it's not bad. I mean, you get used to the gray. It doesn't rain all that much. And when it does, it's not downpouring like the Midwest where there are distinct seasons and there's this distinct seasons here, but all of the seasons are sort of mellow, and right. It's like, oh, you might get a little bit of snow or like usually no snow, but it's going to be cold. So, okay, that's fine. And then in the summer, it's, 80 degrees. It's not too hot, not too humid. Seattle, it's basically perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. The variances are different. So that's cool. Well, you are quite prolific and have just tons of content out there for anybody who's done any kind of mild searching. It's pretty easy to find. But for those who haven't followed you, maybe just meeting you for the first time, what's your journey been, and how did you end up at Microsoft and specifically, focusing on Xamarin and client developer tools at Microsoft? What's your journey been?
Yeah, so I'm James Montemagno, like you said. I've been a longtime .NET developer, so that's sort of my shtick. I found .NET when I was in college. I was lucky enough that in high school, so I'm 33 now. So when I was in high school in the early 2000s or so, I was lucky enough that we had a programming class. I learned C++, BASIC. I was using Visual Studio 6 specifically, one of my favorite versions of Visual Studio, to do game development, like command line text adventures. And I fell in love with that. I fell in love with games. I was a big gamer my entire childhood growing up, a big Nintendo fan. I actually do a Nintendo podcast, funnily enough, from a Microsoft employee, but I've always been a Nintendo fan and I still am to this day. And I wanted to get into games. So I went to school at UAT, which is a game school. They advertise in video game magazines and websites and stuff. And I went off and made Xbox games for a little bit and decided I hated it. And sometimes you got to do it, and then you realize that was the wrong decision. But luckily enough, I was still in school. Our school forced us to do an internship, and the internship was at a game studio. And I was lucky enough to work on a really great Xbox 360 game that didn't sell well at all. So no one played it, but it's okay. It's called Shred Nebula. You can actually get it on the Xbox One. They ported it magically somehow, but like 5 people bought it. But that's okay. It didn't matter. I literally built a game before I was 21. I thought that was so cool. Humble brag there. But what was cool at the studio is it was very small, and we had to wear a lot of hats. And I decided that I didn't necessarily love C++, but we needed a lot of desktop tools to be written for our designers and our artists and our game balancers. So I started building desktop WinForms apps, and I fell in love with client development. I just fell in love with it. It all, like, you have that moment where it just clicks. You're like, oh, I found the thing that I'm really good at. And like, look, I can make this thing. People can use it. I'm adding so much value to these artists' lives because they'd have to go through so many steps before. Now they click 1 or 2 buttons and boom, it's exporting code into the game for me. So I've made their lives easier. I've made my lives easier, and it's C# and it's .NET. And I'm just like, oh, this is everything I've ever wanted in life. So after that stint, I went out and I tried to find a job in C# .NET development. And Phoenix is a pretty I wouldn't say like the hottest market for development, but it's a pretty good market in general. And I found a job at Canon writing printer software for them. I had a small office there, and it was enterprise printer software. So we sort of made the outlook of reprographer printing that print huge blueprints for all intents and purposes. I did that for a long time, and that was amazing. It was like one of the best jobs out of college because big name, big architecture, super legacy .NET 1.1, transforming. It took a whole day to build the solution, just like janky, old, super old, like TFS 2005, doing those huge migrations every 2 years. It was like the life. It was the dream. It was like so much fun and so much learning that I didn't get in college, because it was so big. So blessed to have amazing coworkers that could teach me so much right out of college. And so that went really good. I did that for 4 years, did a lot of travel for the company. And then I went to PDC. I don't know if you've ever been to a PDC. They don't exist.
Professional Developers Conference. Oh, yeah.
I was like, man, I'm a professional developer. I mean, it's what it says on my resume of 3 years. And I want to go to this PDC. And I went to the final PDC. So this is a conference before Build happened.
And Build kind of replaced PDC, just like Ignite replaced TechEd.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that because there was Build, was there Build and then PDC and then Build again, or was it only ever PDC? I forget.
Well, there was PDC was a tradition for a long time, and then with the Web 2.0 movement, Build came out as a developers Web 2.0 conference, and then PDC stopped happening every year, and then ultimately Build became the developers conference, just like PDC had long been the developers conference.
Got it. That was it. Yeah, and so I went to the final PDC on campus in Redmond. I fell in love with Washington. I'm like, I need to get a job here. They gave me a Windows phone. It was like that old Windows phone, Samsung one or whatever, or LG it was. They gave me a Windows phone. It had a German adapter in it. I could figure it out. And I started building Windows Phone apps. I fell in love with mobile development. And then I found a job in Washington, in Seattle, because I fell in love with this place. I moved up here. And literally the first day on the job, I always tell the story, is my boss came in and said, hey, we hired you. We need an iOS, Android, Windows Phone app. 2 months, go. And I was like, okay, nice. Cool. Well, I've never built an iOS app or an Android app. I don't even have any smart device besides this Windows Phone that I got last year. And that's when I started POCing with everything. I found Xamarin. I fell in love with it because it was C#. I could access everything. So I built all their apps for 2 years. And I was super successful there. We had a really good run of building mobile apps for home theater PCs and DVR systems. And I was lucky enough yet again to kind of run into some people at Xamarin. Recruiter reached out to me, and lo and behold, I stumbled upon a kind of dream job of working at the company that built the tools that I loved. And my job at Xamarin was a developer evangelist or advocate, if you will, that would go out and help other developers learn to build apps with Xamarin. And I was still building apps with Xamarin. I built our conference apps, a bunch of other apps, personal apps all the time. And I did that for up until the acquisition. So I got acquired, Aqua hired in, and now I'm at Microsoft. It's been 3 years at Microsoft, which is crazy. So 3 years at Xamarin, 3 years at Microsoft, 2 years doing mobile dev before that, and a year before that doing Windows Phone dev. So 9 years in the mobile space. Wow, that's almost a decade. That's crazy. So that's my life. Yeah, that's my life. And now I'm here. Now I'm here with you.
And fast forward, and it appears the vision is no matter which one of these client devices, we can write C# and use the .NET ecosystem and basically place our apps anywhere. What am I missing here? And cast the vision for people who have not closely followed you. What's the overall vision for what you want to enable and what Microsoft wants to enable people to do with all of these various client devices?
Yeah, some people at Microsoft like to say that we empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And that's what it says on the back of my badge. And that's pretty much a true statement. And specifically around, development, what's great about being part of Microsoft, the Xamarin team, is that we are that magical mobile goodness on the .NET side. So we get closer to the .NET team. Our vision is singularity of .NET and make it super butter for developers to build for any platform. So what we really like to say is, hey, we want to enable you as a developer to have a single platform that enables you to develop beautiful native and cross-platform apps for anything that you want, whether that's desktop, mobile, IoT, web, machine learning, AI, embedded devices, anything that you want to develop for, we will be there for you. And that's what .NET is, the .NET platform. You can go to dot.net, so .net, and you'll find basically when you go there, just a series of boxes that say, what do you want to develop for? Do you want web? Do you want gaming? Do you want cloud? And when you click on mobile, boom, there's Xamarin. So there's frameworks that power each of them. So when you develop a desktop app or a web app or a cross-platform app, there's frameworks that enable that. And Xamarin is a framework that enables you to build for sort of non-traditional Windows devices. So like Android, iOS, watchOS, macOS, tvOS, so all those different things. But the beautiful part here is that you can not only just build for all of them, you can also share code across all of them. And that's the really important story, is similar to how a web developer is like, well, I could take my JavaScript, and as long as JavaScript can be run anywhere in like a V8 engine, that's what .NET does, right? So .NET is a native runtime that's built to run on all of these devices. So you take your C#, your .NET logic, and you can deploy and build not only business logic, but also we have the UI frameworks for you to build on those different platforms. And that's like a very powerful thing that we enable on the .NET team.
And that is a pretty powerful vision, because I've done a number of native mobile for iOS and Android, and the ecosystem is so different. But when you have a single code base and a single skill set, Visual Studio, which is a rock solid IDE and C#, that's pretty amazing. But your background also included game development. Does that factor into the vision here?
Yeah, totally does. When you go to the .NET website, you'll see gaming is right there, boom, right there. And now Microsoft ourselves, we do have some different engines that are out there. However, we partner very close with Unity, which little company you may have heard of. They power basically all the games ever. And we work really closely with them because you build 2D and 3D games with C#, with Visual Studio and the Unity IDE that they have for their assets and construction of scenes. And you're building scripts with C#, with Visual Studio or Visual Studio for Mac, and you're debugging your apps with Visual Studio. And you can share code. They can share the same logic, game logic, libraries between the two work very close. But there's all sorts of great game engines that are built with C#. So Monogame is a absolutely lovely project that basically takes XNA, which was an older game engine. That's what I've used XNA in the past, and they ported XNA to run everywhere. So Nintendo Switch, Xbox. I mean, C#'s on your Nintendo Switch. It's on your Nintendo 3DS. It's on your PlayStation. It's on your TV. It's everywhere, and that's cool. So there's a bunch of different game engines that allow you to leverage C# and .NET. So based on what you want to build, we're there for you.
Okay. So getting back to mobile, one of the common questions of our DevOps listeners is they're users of Azure DevOps services, and web applications are really common, and backend Windows services and Azure functions and all that. And there's a lot of clarity starting to emerge about the right patterns to build and deploy those and do automated testing. But with Xamarin, can you walk us through what the chain should look like in today's day and age for a multi-targeted Xamarin application, from building it to the automated test suites, deploying it to pre-production, and then ultimately production and telemetry, and watching it with there's App Center and Azure DevOps services. What does the chain look like if you're going to start one fresh today?
Yeah, I figure what I really want to talk about is this specifically, and sort of this full end-to-end story of what does it mean to be able to build all these apps, build mobile apps, and how do all these tools work together? Because, well, we say that this is our mission, and our goal is to enable you to build for all these different platforms. What I love is that all of these frameworks that are powering .NET everywhere are really tried and true. I mean, I've been building apps with Xamarin for over 8 years, right? And I've deployed 60 some applications across all these different platforms. And that's what I love about it, is that through all of those years, I've always felt very comfortable, very confident being able to. That's why I'm here today. That's why I'm sitting on this phone call on the Xamarin team, at Microsoft, because I love it and I believe in our product. Because Xamarin, in a nutshell, to begin with, enables you to build native iOS and Android applications, and we've extended that also to other platforms around Google and Apple, such as tvOS, watchOS, macOS, and of course share code with anything else that .NET runs. So what I like to say is, what's unique about us is that you think of us just as another head project. So you may today already have an ASP.NET Core web app and maybe like a WPF desktop application. And then what you say is, you're like, well, I need a mobile app. So you add a mobile app to your project inside of Visual Studio, and you add an iOS app, an Android app, and you get to pick and choose whether you would like to build out native screens with Xamarin. So you have access to all of the same native screens that an iOS or Android developer has, or you can use our cross-platform UI framework for iOS and Android and Windows called Xamarin Forms. And that gives you an abstraction of different controls. And you can blend these two worlds together, so you can mix and match and have some cross-platform UI, some traditional UI, and everything is 100% native. So everything compiles into native screens, native code, everything like that at the end of the day. So you get a native app on every single platform. And that's what we do love about it. So really, the cool part there is you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to add an iOS and Android app. Well, how do I share code? Well, we have a solution for that, which is .NET Standard. .NET Standard gives you one single library to share code across all of .NET projects. So now you can say, okay, well, I already have a little bit of code in my ASP.NET Core app. I have a little bit of code in my WPF app. Let me rip some of those controllers or models or view models out, and let me put those into a shared .NET Standard library that I'm going to share with my mobile apps. And now this is beautiful, Jeffrey, because what I've just done and what we've done as a team together is we've built a single testable middle layer for all of our applications. And that's like a beautiful structure, because the desktop app, the mobile apps, and the web app, they all have their own platform-specific UI things. But the logic there that they're sharing is 100% testable. You can use MS test, NUnit, XUnit. It doesn't matter, right? You're just running just normal tests in general. And then you go and develop, right? You develop your applications. What's beautiful about Xamarin is that you have access to all of the native APIs. So anything that you could do for iOS or Android, you can do in C#. This is the distinguishing feature besides being able to write an app for iOS and C#, which I think by its own, if we just say you can build an iOS app in C#, you would think that would be good enough. But no, we go further and we say you have access to every single API in iOS in C# with C# features. So you can access all that goodness, right? But we also leverage shared native APIs too. So just like Xamarin Forms gives you cross-platform UI, we have Xamarin Essentials, which works with all of our platforms. And that gives you about 60 plus native features from a cross-platform API. So you can start to really build out your application very fast, right? Cross-platform UI, cross-platform native APIs for like connectivity, geolocation, all that stuff. So you get access to all that, which is beautiful. All in Visual Studio. You never have to touch Objective-C. There's no other build systems. Like you just use MS Build, right? You're just building your application like we always have. And this is what's great, right? A .NET developer, same tools, the same logic, the same infrastructure that we've been building forever. And it's just an iOS or an Android app. Of course, you have Android emulators and profilers, and you have, configuration and devices and emulators, simulators, all that jazz. But it's the same as if you were to be building for web or desktop, right? Do you want to deploy on x86 architecture or x64, or do you want to test in Edge or in Chrome? Like you set up your dev environment. So that's always just, what are you targeting? So you have all of this there, and then it's time for DevOps, right? And it's time for deployment. And that's where I think the ecosystem of this end-to-end has been really amazing, because as a Xamarin developer building iOS and Android apps and having to extend to mobile or to web or to desktop or to anything else, it's the same tools, it's the same environment with some quirks. So what I mean by that is inside of Azure DevOps, you can go in and you just add a Xamarin iOS or a Xamarin Android build configuration. So inside of Azure DevOps, there's all of these tasks that are specific for mobile development. And I've actually built my own Azure DevOps extension called Mobile Tasks for Azure DevOps that do a bunch of other cool things like versioning and switching out identifiers and whatnot for iOS and Android. But for all intents and purposes, it's just MS Build, right? And the quirk or the difference is that when you're building an iOS app, you have to build it on a Mac. Android, you can build on Windows just fine. But the cool part is Azure DevOps has hosted Macs readily available with all the tools. So you set up your pipeline literally exactly the same. There's no difference. So the building part is the same. And that's important because we're not just building a mobile app. Nowadays, we're building a mobile app, backend services, website, desktop app, database deployments, and they all go into that pipeline together. So I can't deploy my mobile app until I update my database, right? So there's that order of operations. And just think of a mobile app with Xamarin as just another head project, just another project you need to deploy. And that's what I love to talk about from the build part. And then we get into the testing and releases, which is a little bit different because it's mobile. Of course, it's different. So.
The Azure DevOps Podcast is sponsored by ClearMeasure, a software engineering firm and Microsoft Gold partner, empowering development teams to be their best. ClearMeasure equips developers with the DevOps tools, methods, and automation necessary to focus on building their applications, rather than wrestling with builds, deployments, or environments. Click clear-measure.com to see whether a DevOps implementation is for you.
Well, Microsoft Ignite is behind us. Wow, what a week. Make sure to go and check out all of the recorded sessions and the recorded keynotes. That is just a mountain of information. I think it's around 600 sessions. So it's going to take a while if you expect to get through all that content. But about, I would say, 25% is purely software development content. And then there's also a lot of IT content as well. But a few announcements. My latest book, .NET DevOps for Azure, is available for sale in bookstores and Amazon.com and apress.com. It's finally out in print. The second edition is in progress, but it won't be out for a number of months. And so you can go get the book on Amazon.com, and also a special offer for user group or conference leaders or anyone speaking at those community events. I'd love to give two print copies of the book for you to give away. And to request those, go to bit.ly/.NET DevOps book for community. And last announcement on training, had an awesome .NET DevOps Bootcamp at the end of October, and we're going to put some more dates on the calendar. If you've followed me for over 20 years, you know that I love to teach, and I'm teaching my new .NET DevOps Bootcamp, and so check out my Twitter at Jeffrey Palermo for upcoming dates. And this is aimed at lead developers and team architects who want to ship quickly and operate better. And now let's get back to the second half of the show. So up through continuous integration and getting to a deployable artifact of some point, it's just Azure pipelines, but you might select the hosted Mac. Or can you build with one build configuration for multi-targeted, or do you have to set up multiple pipelines for each target?
Yeah, so what I like to do is inside of Azure DevOps, I'll usually have a single pipeline with multiple, what are they called? A kind of environment. Phases, multiple phases. Thank you.
So you can have multiple agents within a single build configuration.
Yeah, that's what I'll do. So what I like to have is a phase for Android, a phase for iOS, a phase for Windows, a phase for my web app, whatever. Maybe a phase for my Azure function, however you want to build it. And then it's sort of up to you how you want to build it. So you could put it all in one phase and just say, hey, I'm going to build my Android and my iOS app on a Mac, good to go, pick it. And then for phase 2, where I'm building my WPF app, build it on a Windows machine. And you can pick and choose how you want to configure it. I usually put them in multiple phases so I can sort of just see the pipelines working. So if the Android phase fails, my iOS one still gets built, which I kind of like. That's usually how I would do it. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And all right, so now that the build's running and we had a successful build, and how many, if we have multi-target, all three, EWP, Android, iOS, and then some backend application, how many artifacts is typical in what format? Are we packaging them up as NuGets, as .zips, or is there a different format that we should be targeting?
Yeah, great question. So what happens is all three of them are going to have different packaging. Just as if you were building your web app versus your desktop app, those things deploy differently. So maybe your Azure function zips up, or your website is I guess your website could be a zip and deploy, or it could be some other, FTP upload or something. I think people still use FTP. That's still a thing, right? I don't know. And
it was a thing.
It was a thing, right? And then what happens is, for Android, there's a few different build mechanisms. So when you build your app, our MS Build task automatically figures out that stuff for you. So it can build an APK, which is an Android package, or a newer format, which is an app bundle, which helps Google and the Google Play Store break up your app for multiple devices, so it can really slim down the size of your app. And those are just MS Build configuration steps in the task. And the same thing for iOS. iOS, we have a .ipa file, which is what we upload to Apple at the end of the day. So MS Build just figures that out for you. And specifically inside of Azure DevOps, there are signing steps specifically for iOS and Android. So you register for a developer account with Google and Apple, just like you would for Windows, right? For Microsoft, or if you signed up for a web provider to deploy your app to a backend, probably Azure. Let's say hopefully Azure, but anywhere else. I like Azure. It's good. I happen to work at Microsoft, so a little biased, but you do that. And through Google or Apple, you create your provisioning. So you're signing certificates, and there's steps right inside of Azure DevOps to install certificates, put it in the key store, all that stuff, and boom, you get a file that you're ready to deploy. And like I said, there's a lot of extensions. So I'll link to you here, and you can put it in the show notes. I have this mobile tasks for iOS and Android. So it can do version bumping, changing names, doing a bunch of offsets and things. So just like you would version your build, you were going to version your mobile app. So that's a nice thing too, that you can use these extensions into Azure DevOps services or server, and then do mobile specific things, and that's sort of a nicety there. And then boom, you get an artifact. So if you're just deploying iOS and Android, you're going to get like the APK and the IPA, but maybe you're getting a drop of your website, of your Azure function, and you're going to deploy these out to whatever you want to do.
Okay, so we're connecting infrastructure, and for people who have never done this before, never connected App Center, is it pretty straightforward, next finish, or are there particular wire up steps that people need to pay attention to?
Yeah, now it's like deployment and testing time, and this is sort of up to you. So during that build phase, you get to decide if you run your MS tests on all that shared .NET standard logic, all that stuff. And when you want to deploy your application, that's where it becomes a little bit more intricate. That's a good word, intricate, for iOS and Android, because iOS and Android and Apple and Google and Microsoft, we all have our own restrictions around how you can install these apps. Security, you want to be secure in your deployment. So that's where App Center, you keep seeing App Center, so I'll say App Center in general. App Center now is where this comes in. And App Center is this beautiful thing that provides like a mobile specific, or not even mobile, but app specific services. And they offer a few sort of DevOps-y things. So they do offer an easy cloud build. So you could build an App Center if you seem fit. If you're just only building just an app, that's a good starting point. But they offer also mobile testing on physical devices for iOS and Android. They offer distribution to your testers, to developers, to the App Store directly. They also offer analytics, crash reporting, database services, authentication, and push notifications. So all these really mobile and app-specific services. And the cool part here is that you can use some of them, or you could use none of them. So if you're like, you know what, I don't even want to worry about Azure DevOps or App Center. Sorry, if I don't want to worry about App Center, I want to just, I'm doing my own thing. I have my own distribution set up. I love to email files around. This is working for me because I'm solo dev, or I'm small independent shop. I got my own flow. I want one tool, one everything. And you don't have to use App Center. You could do everything in Azure DevOps, because Azure DevOps, in the release pipeline, you can distribute an app to the Play Store, to Google Play, to the Apple App Store directly. Those are tasks built right in. So if you want to deploy to Apple's test flight service and do your testing that way, if you want to deploy directly to Google Play, you can do that right from Azure DevOps. You don't have to. What I prefer, though, is I like App Center to handle that deployment. And what's cool is that there are App Center tasks built into Azure DevOps. So instead of saying, hey, I'm going to go directly to the store from Azure DevOps, what I like to do is I like to say, hey, I'm going to take this app, I need to test it, and I need to do alpha, beta, maybe public preview of this app, and then go to the App Store. So what you can do is you can have those tasks that deploy into App Center. And the real win of doing that is that when you deploy into App Center, which will then distribute your application, is that App Center is optimized for that flow. So you can register users, you can register your Azure AD groups, so you can send it to specific people. They register their devices with App Center. It's all super streamlined. They can install your profile. Everything happens very seamless. It's like nice emails, nice installation. It guides your users through it, right? And as a developer, you might be saying like, I can figure it out. But when you need to give it to a marketing team member or somebody else that isn't used to installing an iOS certificate, onto their device, it's going to be really weird, where App Center will walk you through the cycle. And on top of that, you can optionally include the App Center SDK into your app. And that will give you analytics, crash reporting for free, push notifications, but it will also enable you to control the distribution upgrade cycle. So what's cool here is you can have App Center distribution, and when you push that package for iOS or Android, it will prompt your user and say, hey, there's an update. You need to install that. And you can even force them to install too. And what's nice here is like everything that I've described, I've been doing it in the vein of like Xamarin, but all of this works with every single mobile app, no matter what. I know I'm the Xamarin person, right? But like I understand that you may have a legacy or an existing like Objective-C, a Java app or a React Native app or some other app, Cordova app or something like App Center, Azure DevOps. It works with all of it, right? Everything I just described works with every mobile app because we in Azure DevOps, the team, and by we, I mean, I have nothing to do with it, but the team over there, the amazing team over there has all of these mobile tools. And of course, Xamarin, first-class citizen, like every single programming language, Azure DevOps should work for everything. And what we do...
And we just recently interviewed Daniel Jacobson, and he was talking about Windows apps and WinForms apps with App Center and having test users. So it looks like there's a lot going on that front.
Yeah, they really want that to be seamless, right? We want one way to easily build and manage your build and release pipelines, and then easily get it onto your users' devices, handle that upgrade cycle. We want that to be the same for all of our apps. And the beautiful part there, like Daniel was talking about, is the cool part here is when you're building with .NET, when you're building with WinForms, WPF, or Xamarin for your mobile apps, you get one seamless integration, right? When you want to add App Center, it's one NuGet package. It's shared code across all of your mobile applications because it's .NET standard. So when you're like, I want to integrate, this is like my favorite part about like .NET development in 2019 is like, I want to add analytics. Well, if I'm developing in 3 or 4 different programming languages and 3 or 4 different IDEs, I got to go configure that a bunch of different times. Like, no, the real way to do is you add one NuGet package, one line of code, and you're done. Like for all of my apps. And that's how easy and seamless we really want it to be, which is very awesome. And that's the dream that you can do today. So when people are like, oh, should I build with Xamarin? Should I build with this? I'm like, I like to look at the end to end, right? What is my actual, not just day one going to be like, but what's my week 2? What's my week 4? What's my week 20? What's my year 2 going to look like, right? And as your product grows and scales, you have all of these tried and tested services and integrations and frameworks like readily available to you. And just the time saving of saying, you know what, I need analytics. Boom, 5 seconds and I'm done. Like that's mind-boggling awesome to be able to do.
Well, that's a lot of great movement, a lot of great stuff for folks to follow up on. As we wrap up, what you mentioned a few, and we'll include those in the show notes, but are there any other resources that people should absolutely go and check out in order to dig deeper?
Yeah, so there's a few things that are out there. So we can put links to the extensions that I had in there. I also have just created with my good friend Abel Wang, who's on our cloud advocate team for DevOps specifically.
Yeah, he's been a guest on the show.
Oh, cool.
Great interview.
Abel is fantastical. He's one of my favorite human beings on earth. And him and I said, we need to sit down and we need to talk mobile DevOps, which is funny that we're talking about DevOps for mobile here. And what was cool is he's pretty unfamiliar with sort of the mobile stuff. And I'm a little unfamiliar with the web stuff. I'm not a web developer. It's not my background. So we sort of sat down and we did a 6-part series. And it's from what is DevOps to let's release to the App Store. Like, let's go through everything that I just talked about. And they're, 10 to 20 minute episodes and you walk through everything. And that's a cool 6-part series. And you might be in the stage before that, which is like, hey, I'm a .NET developer and I want to build an iOS app. How do I do that? And
yeah, right.
That could be where you're at right now. And we just rolled out around .NET Conf time, this entire 101 series for everything. So .NET, C#, ASP.NET, and Xamarin. And my good friends, Brandon and Matt, they did the Xamarin 101 series. And they're all very short, 5 to 10 minute episodes. Shows you how to build an iOS and Android application. Not just like a blank file. Like I have a lot of videos that are like, here's file new and here's how to run it. But this is like, let's get you installed, set up, build a screen, show some data, do some navigation, do some stuff, and build an app like you would want to build. And you can go through those in a day or two. It's all free. Everything is free. Everything is free. Visual Studio's free. Xamarin's free. Azure DevOps, everything's free. Everything's free. You can go build it. You can deploy it. Nothing costs any money. So, I mean, of course, if you want to pay for stuff, yes. And if you're a big enterprise making millions of dollars, you pay Visual Studio licensing. But besides that,
can you throw in some cars and houses in that plan?
I would like that. Would be great. Some bonuses, and so you can. A lot of people ask me like, can I deploy to the apps? Or I want to build a mobile app in my spare time. Like, can I go do that? Yeah, go do that. It's free. I do it all the time. At home right now, I'm in Visual Studio Community Edition. Me, James Montemagno, me at home on the weekend. I'm building apps over here. I don't make $1 million on my app, so I get to do everything for free. Now, once I make $1 million, I'll pay for Visual Studio and get the Pro or Enterprise Edition. But now I got Community Edition. I'm good to go. Mac, PC, Visual Studio for Mac, Visual Studio Windows. You're good to go. So great resources here. And the other thing I'll talk about too is a lot of people learn by videos. Some people learn by our amazing documentation. So you can go to our docs.microsoft.com/Xamarin. So I'll also link that here too. They just redid the portal. It's beautiful. The documentation team is wonderful individuals, wonderful people. Everything I was talking about for building apps. And of course, follow like my GitHub. Everything is just /James Montemagno. So GitHub /James Montemagno, Twitter /James Montemagno. My website, montemagno.com. I think also jamesmontemagno.com goes to my website. But I have a lot of great content there. And I also Twitch stream. So a new way that a lot of people have been interacting with the team. So it's not just me, but a lot of our PMs and engineers are doing this now is we're doing live coding. So every Friday, usually around 2:00 Pacific, I hop on Twitch for 2 to 3 hours, and I've been building an application all year, just building and integrating new services and upgrading and listening and doing pull requests with the community, all open source, and it's super fun. So all different team members are doing this all the time. So we're always on there, almost all the time. When you go to science and technology, there's probably someone coding either .NET apps or mobile apps or web apps or games all the time with Unity and C#. So a really great way of interacting with the team in real time, because videos, that's static content, right? They're there, there's comments, but it's not real time. Like I'm there, I'm communicating with you. I'm getting less done than I probably would, but to me, that's not the important part. I'm teaching, I'm having fun, right? And that's why I have these crazy lights and 15 cameras pointed at me, because it's just fun. So
yeah, a quick rundown of your setup and all the product research you did would be interesting, because I bet there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, I actually have I have a live streaming kit, a GitHub guest. I'll put that in there too. Nice. And this links to everything that I use, because I get asked that all the time. So software I use, the equipment I use, the stream settings, and then I have a good friend, Susan Hinton, who is just, you got to put this into the show notes. She's an amazing human being. Just in general, she's a live coder. She codes JavaScript, IoT stuff on Sundays. And she did this blog post called My Twitch Live Coding Setup. And she uses a one PC setup. And she goes through everything, her settings, her configuration, how she does everything. It was trending on Reddit and all this stuff. It's very good. Suze is a amazing human being, and it's very, very in depth. So if you want the 101, 051 overview, check out my GitHub gist, but check out Suze's Medium post, because it's delightful. You should just go on Twitch and follow her. She's an amazing human being. So
fantastic. We'll definitely include all that in the show notes. And if you haven't followed the URLs just from the audio, make sure to go and check out the show on AzureDevOps.show. That's the URL, and get the show notes. And they should come through in Apple Podcast and Google Play or whatever player you happen to be using. And man, James, this is a lot of great information, and I'm going to be digging into some of those pieces that I wasn't aware of as well. So thanks so much for sharing. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if people love my voice, if you just want more James in your life, that's totally a thing that can happen.
Oh, of course.
I do have a podcast that's called Merge Conflict, which is a great name for a podcast that I do with my good friend Frank Kruger, who's an independent app developer in the community of C#.net and Xamarin. you go to mergeconflict.fm or just go to your podcast app. You're already on a podcast app. Just go subscribe. Just go do that. That'd be cool. And every week we talk about all things .NET, mobile, web. We talk about everything in the world of development, but we focus on mobile. But every single week, if you want more, boom, that's good to go. And yeah, go learn Xamarin. Go to Xamarin.com. Go learn the things. That's it. I mean, it's great. I mean, I like to tell the end-to-end story, and I don't get to tell it all the time because I focus on just so much. Just here's building the mobile app. I don't get to talk about the whole end-to-end. So I appreciate being able to do that today.
Absolutely. Listeners, go subscribe to Merge Conflict on mergeconflict.fm. James, it was great. And for all you listeners out there, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure DevOps Podcast, a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Go to www.azuredevops.show for show notes and other episodes. On behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, and our sponsors, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.